Ace Frehley was halfway through his blistering guitar solo on Shock Me when something in the crowd made him stop playing. The band kept going for a few bars before they realized the lead guitarist had gone completely silent. His Gibson Les Paul hung at his side, unplugged from the moment. The spotlight found him standing motionless at the edge of the stage, staring into the darkness of the arena. Security started moving immediately, thinking something was medically wrong, but Ace raised one hand, signaling them to wait. Then he did something nobody at Madison Square Garden that night in October 1995 expected. He set down his guitar, walked to the microphone, and said 4 words that would stop the entire show. "Get that kid up here." Before we continue with what happened next, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. This story reveals a side of the Space Ace that even longtime Kiss fans never knew existed. It was supposed to be a triumphant night. Ace Frehley's Comet, his band after leaving Kiss, was headlining one of rock music's most legendary venues. The place where Kiss had filmed parts of their concert film. The same stage where Ace had stood in silver makeup and platform boots, shooting rockets from his guitar while 20,000 people screamed. Tonight he was older, the makeup was gone, and the crowd was smaller. But Madison Square Garden still meant something. It meant you'd made it. It meant you mattered. For Ace, playing there without Kiss, without Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley sharing the spotlight, it meant even more. This was his night to prove that Paul Daniel Frehley from the Bronx could still pack an arena on his own name. The show had been electric from the first note. Ace's fingers moved across the fretboard with the fluid confidence of someone who'd spent 3 decades mastering his instrument. The Les Paul's tone cut through the arena with that signature sound, the one that had defined hard rock guitar in the 70s. Wah-wah pedal. Effects, bluesy bends, pentatonic scales that somehow sounded both technical and effortless. The crowd knew every song. And when Ace launched into Shock Me, the Kiss classic he'd written and sung himself, the entire arena became a time machine back to 1977. That's when Ace saw her. 4th row, slightly to the right. A girl who couldn't have been more than 9 or 10 years old, standing on her seat, holding a homemade sign that read, "Ace, you're my hero," in glitter paint that caught the stage lights. She was wearing a Frehley's Comet t-shirt that was 3 sizes too big, probably an adult shirt she'd borrowed because they didn't make them in kids' sizes. Her father stood next to her, one hand steadying her on the seat, the other holding up his own fist in that universal rock concert gesture. But that wasn't what made Ace stop playing. What made him stop was seeing the girl's father suddenly grab her arm roughly and yank her down from the seat. Hard. The kind of pull that snapped her whole body sideways. The sign fell from her hands. Even from the stage, Ace could see her face crumple into tears. The guitar solo died in his hands. His fingers just stopped moving. The rest of the band kept playing for another few seconds before Anton Fig on drums noticed something was wrong and started signaling the others. Within moments, Madison Square Garden was filled with confused silence and the murmur of thousands of people wondering what had just happened. Ace Frehley stood at the microphone, his face illuminated by the spotlight, his expression unreadable behind those dark-tinted glasses he always wore. But everyone who'd followed his career knew that look. It was the same intensity that used to show through the Space Ace makeup during those legendary Kiss performances. He pointed toward the 4th row. "Security." His voice came through clear and steady over the PA system. "4th row, right side. I need you to bring that little girl and her father backstage. Right now." The arena went dead silent. 7,000 people turned to look at the fourth row. The father, a man in his 40s wearing a Metallica shirt and looking increasingly uncomfortable, froze. His daughter was still crying, trying to pick up her fallen sign from the sticky arena floor. Ace kept his eyes locked on them. "Sir, I'm not asking. Security is coming to get you. You can walk with them, or they can escort you. But either way, you're coming backstage." Two security guards were already moving down the aisle. The crowd started buzzing with speculation. Nobody knew what was happening, but everyone understood this wasn't part of the show. This was real. Ace's road manager came running from the wings. "Ace, what's going on?" Ace pulled the mic away from his mouth and spoke directly to him, his voice low but firm. "That guy just grabbed his kid rough, real rough. I want them backstage. I want to talk to them." The security guards reached the fourth row, and within minutes, the family was being led through the backstage doors. Ace turned back to the crowd. "Folks, we're going to take a 15-minute break. I apologize for the interruption, but this is important." He set the microphone in its stand and walked off stage. Backstage, in one of the dressing rooms, the father stood with his arms crossed defensively. His wife sat on a couch with their daughter, whose name was Christina. The little girl was still clutching her ruined sign, looking absolutely terrified. When Ace walked in, still wearing his stage clothes, sweat from the performance soaking through his shirt, the room went even more tense. Christina's eyes went wide. Her hero was standing right there, but instead of the magical moment she'd probably imagined, this felt scary and confusing. Ace pulled up a chair and sat down, putting himself at eye level with the family rather than standing over them. For a long moment, he just looked at them. Then he spoke, and his voice was completely different from the commanding tone he'd used on stage. This was quieter, almost gentle. "Christina, is it?" he asked, reading the name written on her homemade sign. The girl nodded, not trusting her voice. "That's a beautiful sign you made. How long did it take you?" Christina glanced at her mother before answering in a small voice. 2 days. I used 3 bottles of glitter." Ace smiled genuinely. 3 bottles. That's dedication. You know, when I was your age, I made a sign for a concert too. Yours is way better." Then he looked up at the father. "Sir, I'm going to be direct with you because I don't have time to dance around this. I saw you grab your daughter. It wasn't gentle, it was rough, and it made her cry." The father's jaw tightened. "With all due respect, Mr. Frehley, she was standing on a seat. That's not allowed. I was correcting her." "By yanking her hard enough that she lost her balance?" Ace's voice stayed level, but there was steel underneath it. "I've been performing for 30 years. I know the difference between a parent keeping their kid safe and a parent taking out frustration on their kid." The room went very quiet. The father's face flushed. "You're out of line. What happens with my family is my business." "You're right," Ace said calmly. "I'm not a parent, but I was a kid once. I grew up in the Bronx with a father who had a temper. I know what it feels like to walk on eggshells, and I promised myself if I ever saw a kid in that situation, I wasn't going to look the other way." But what Ace said next was something even his closest friends didn't know. He looked directly at Christina, and his voice got even quieter. "When I was 10 years old, about your age, my dad took me to see a baseball game at Yankee Stadium. I was so excited I could barely sit still. Middle of the 5th inning, I stood up on my seat to see better. My dad grabbed me and pulled me down hard. So hard I hit my head on the seat in front of us. I started crying, and he told me to stop being a baby or we'd leave. Christina was listening intently now, her tears drying. I didn't enjoy the rest of that game, Ace continued. I was too scared of doing something else wrong. For years, I thought that was normal. It took me a long time to realize that fear and love aren't supposed to go together. He looked back at the father. Your daughter made you a sign. She spent 2 days putting glitter on poster board because she wanted to show her hero how much she admired him. She was so excited she stood on her seat. That's not misbehavior. That's a kid being joyful, and you crushed that joy. The mother spoke for the first time, her voice shaky. Mr. Frehley, Robert's been under a lot of stress. His hours at work got cut. We're behind on bills. Then he needs to deal with that stress some way that doesn't involve putting his hands on a child, Ace said firmly, but not unkindly. I've had plenty of stress in my life, more than you probably know. There were years where I wasn't handling it well, but I never took that out on someone smaller and weaker than me. The father's defensive posture started to crack, his arms uncrossed. He sat down heavily. I didn't mean to hurt her, he said quietly. My father used to grab me like that. Worse, actually. I swore I'd never be like him. But tonight, I heard his voice coming out of my mouth. Ace nodded slowly. That's the thing about that kind of treatment. It echoes. It passes down like some terrible inheritance if you're not careful. But recognizing it is the first step to stopping it. You just recognized it. That means you can change it. He turned back to Christina. Sweetheart, I want you to understand something. What happened out there wasn't your fault. You didn't do anything wrong by being excited. Ace stood up and walked to his guitar case in the corner. He opened it and pulled out one of his Gibson Les Pauls, the silver one with the Space Ace design. This guitar is special to me. It's the same model I played when I was Space Ace. I want you to hold it for a minute. Christina's mouth fell open. Her hands trembled as Ace carefully placed the guitar in her lap. It was enormous in her small hands, but she held it like it was made of glass and starlight. Music saved my life, Ace said, kneeling down next to her. When things were bad at home, when I felt like nobody understood me, I had my guitar. Do you play any instruments? Christina shook her head. I wanted to take guitar lessons, but they're expensive. Ace looked up at the parents. If I arrange for Christina to have guitar lessons free of charge, would you support that? The mother nodded immediately, tears streaming down her face. The father, after a moment, nodded too. I would. I should have been encouraging her all along. Ace pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. Call this music school tomorrow and mention my name. They'll set Christina up with a good teacher, and I'll cover the first year of lessons. Christina was crying again, but these were different tears. Thank you, she whispered. I'll practice every day. I promise. I know you will, Ace said. Here's what's going to happen next. Security is going to take you to seats in the front row. You're going to watch the rest of this show from the best seats in the house. Christina, during my next guitar solo, I'm going to play it just for you. I want you to watch my hands. Watch how I move. Can you do that? Christina nodded enthusiastically. Ace turned to the father one more time. Sir, I'm not trying to humiliate you. I'm trying to help you be better than your father was, better than my father was. Our kids deserve that. The father stood up and extended his hand. Ace shook it. Thank you, he said simply, for stopping the show, for caring enough to say something. Just love your daughter, Ace said. love her in ways that make her feel safe. That's all any kid really needs. 15 minutes later, Ace walked back onto the stage. The crowd erupted. He picked up his Les Paul and stepped to the microphone. "Thank you for your patience. I want to explain what just happened. I saw a father handle his daughter roughly during the show. It bothered me enough to stop everything and address it. Some of you might think that was unprofessional. Some might think I should have minded my own business." He paused. "But here's what I've learned. If you see something wrong and you have the power to do something about it, you have a responsibility to act. That little girl was at my show. She was my fan. That made her my responsibility. I'm not going to watch a kid get hurt and pretend I didn't see it." The arena exploded in applause. Not screaming chaos, but something deeper. Respect. People were on their feet, and the ovation lasted for nearly a minute. When it finally died down, Ace pointed to the front row, where Christina sat between her parents. "That young lady right there spent 2 days making me a sign with 3 bottles of glitter paint. This next song is for you, Christina. Pay attention, because someday you're going to be the one up here." He launched into a blistering instrumental showcase, and for the entire performance, he played facing the front row, making eye contact with Christina, showing her every technique, every finger position, every way the guitar could sing. The story spread through rock music circles quickly. The night Ace Frehley stopped his show to confront a father who'd grabbed his daughter roughly. The father kept his promise. He started therapy, working through the anger issues he'd inherited from his own father. His wife later said that night was the turning point in their family's life. Christina became an accomplished guitarist. She practiced obsessively, inspired not just by Ace's playing, but by his intervention, by the fact that her hero had cared enough to stop an entire show because she was hurting. By 16, she was playing in bands. By 20, she was teaching guitar. In a 2019 interview, she talked about that night. "Ace Frehley didn't just teach me guitar that night," Christina said. "He taught me that adults can be protectors, that people with power can use it to help instead of hurt. I think about that night every time I teach a young student." The Space Ace image was always a shield of sorts. It allowed Paul Daniel Frehley to become someone larger than life on stage. But the real man behind the makeup was never as simple as the character suggested. He was complicated, troubled, talented, and deeply human. But he also had moments of profound decency. Moments where the real Ace showed through. The kid from the Bronx who remembered what it felt like to be small and scared and hoping someone would notice. Music has always had the power to change lives, but sometimes the most important moments aren't the songs themselves. Sometimes they're the moments between songs, when the performer sees beyond the mass of faces to the individual person who needs help. Ace Frehley did that at Madison Square Garden in October 1995. The guitar solo that followed might have been technically brilliant, but it wasn't the most important thing he did that night. The most important thing was seeing Christina in the 4th row, recognizing she was hurting, and deciding that mattered more than keeping the show running smoothly.